someone pays cash for and then fixes them up. And when we talk about fixing them up, I tend to fix mine up. I still like to wherever the property is of the after repair value of the property. So again, the main thing that I want you guys to walk away with is buy and hold is the ultimate strategy for most of us, primarily, in my opinion, for retirement and to build wealth for our children and our children's children. What you have to do now is start preparing yourself to do that. Number one, with your credit. Have someone take a look at your credit. I use Lexington Law, but there's another company. Is it called? What's it called?
FES.
FES. You can talk to Vincent about FES to take a look at your credit. And then you've got to save money. And you've got to get cash. I know people like Gary and a few other people are wholesalers. You wholesale to hold. So you've got to put yourself in a position to build that wealth. I don't want you all to think that what we're talking about, we're throwing out numbers and everything sounds good. I don't want you to think it's not attainable for you. But we all got started somewhere. Joseph just didn't walk in the room with all these properties and all the wealth that he has. We started somewhere, and we've started where you are. I started many years ago coming to meetings like this. But you just got to put in your mind that this is what I'm going to do. And while I'm thinking about it, you've also got to study on your own while nobody else is watching. I'm on the internet. I'm reading books. I brought this book, The Millionaire Real Estate Investor. It's by Gary Keller. I've had this book probably for over 10 years, and I keep picking the book up. And there's different sections in the book that pertain to almost everything that I talk about, so I use it as a resource. Probably time for me to buy a new one. But this is a good reference book, a resource for you to even whether you're wholesaling or you're flipping properties, buying for cash, or you're holding. This is a good book, and there's other books as well. But you've really got to embrace the buy and hold strategy and become an expert at it. The type of entity, what types of entities do we buy properties in? Are we going to buy them in our names?
LLC.
Are we going to buy them in LLCs? Are we going to buy them in trusts? How are we going to buy them? And why? Most people just said LLCs. I do buy my properties in LLCs. What's the benefit of buying properties in LLCs? What's the benefit?
Protect your personal assets.
We're protect our personal assets. But at the same time, we're not being taxed as a corporation, we're being taxed as an individual. I know some people who buy and hold, and they buy and hold a lot of properties. Their strategy is,
Each property.
not each property, but 3 or 4 properties they'll put in one LLC. And then 3 or 4 other properties, another LLC, and 3 or 4 properties in another LLC. Why do they do that? So if one LLC, if they get sued, and let's say they have 50 properties all in one LLC, all the assets in that LLC can be sued. So some people may put them in separate, but I know others who put 3 or 4 in one, and 3 and 4 in another, and do it like that. How do you, what type of entities do you use, Joseph?
Yeah, I use LLCs, and most of my assets are either in my LLCs, or I have several LLCs, or I have some in my personal name. The reason why I do that is I know it's just cheaper for financing. Okay, financing, especially when you want to get like Fannie Mae type financing, they usually require that you have it in your individual name. They won't finance it through an entity. And also, your traditional Fannie Mae type financing is primarily 15, 20, 30 year financing, whereas LLC commercial financing, it's shorter, 5, 7, 10 years, and it's amortized over 20, 25 years. So the rates are a little higher for commercial versus Fannie Mae type financing.
So do you buy Fannie Mae properties in your name and then kind of switch them over to your LLC? Or how do you do that, or do you just keep it?
I'll buy property in my LLC.
Right.
Okay, and
But you were talking
if
Fannie Mae.
I decide I want to keep it as a buy buy and hold long term, then there are several strategies. I have some funded by commercial banks, so you'll do commercial type financing, or you can have the Fannie Mae type financing, but you have to take it out of your commercial entity name into a personal name, because you won't fund it. They can't fund it. They won't fund it in your entity. There are pros and cons of both, and the advantage of the Fannie Mae type financing is that it's lower. It's more favorable terms, and but again, you have a problem. You can max out in terms of the numbers that you can have. And so usually when I first started,
Used to be 10.
when I first started it was 20, and then it went down to 10, then it went down to 4, and then back up to 10, and so there's different scenarios that you can, but then you want to go to what we call portfolio lenders. Okay, these are banks who aren't going to sell it to the secondary market. They're not going to sell it to Fannie Mae. They're going to keep it in-house. So they tend to have a bit more flexibility in terms of what they will fund and how they'll fund it. So this is what I'm doing now. I'm developing relationships with smaller banks. There's smaller banks, local banks. You can get to know the decision makers, and they can get to understand what you're doing. If they like what you're doing, they're more likely to fund you, as opposed to going to your big national banks where decisions are not made local, they're made corporate somewhere else, and they're very, very cut and dry as to what they'll fund and what they won't fund.
I had Revere Bank come in. They're a small community bank. They actually came into the office here just to see the operation, and then they gave me a big line of credit to buy and hold.
Yeah.
So you have banks like that that will give you a line of credit. Revere Bank, Eagle Bank, Sandy Spring, Industrial Bank. Anybody have any others?
Colombo.
Colombo.
Mm-hmm.
Burke and Herbert. Burke and Herbert is one. I would advise you, once you really start to get into buy and hold and mastering, the issue is not going to be necessarily finding the properties. The issue that I run into is financing the properties. So I'm on the search of finding properties, almost as obsessed with getting the proper financing as I am finding the properties. The two obviously go hand in hand. You've got to have a marketing strategy, and we'll talk about marketing a little bit later on. So you've got to have the properties. I've been fortunate enough to have some good marketing strategies out here to get the properties. You start to run out of money. You can get financed for $1 million, but $1 million with the buy and hold strategy is only going to last so many properties. So you got to keep seeking financing. So that's part of the puzzle that you've got to put together. Another thing that I want to discuss with Joseph is, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, flipping versus holding. When to flip, when to hold, why do you flip, why do you hold? My suggestion would be to flip properties or to wholesale properties in order to hold. What's your strategy? I know you talked about it a little bit.
Okay. I think for most people in the room, my looking back, okay, if I had to do it all over again, okay, I think to answer your question, I was a hardcore holder. I didn't sell anything, okay, a flip to me was holding something for 15 years. That was a flip, okay. Maybe less than 15 years was a flip, So, but looking back, I would probably do something different. You've got to take care of your cash needs, okay? Nothing happens unless you can pay your car note and your electric bill, okay? And $100, $200 cash flow on a house is not going to cut it, okay? So your cash needs have to be met. And so obviously you have to do strategies that address that. As I say, in my case, I had a job, okay? So just a regular job, nothing special, but that job was a means to an end, okay? I had to have a job because I needed in order to qualify for a mortgage, you needed a job, okay? So, but I wasn't caught up in the job. I used the job as a vehicle to get mortgages, okay? I put it in perspective, okay? So my cash needs were taken care of by my job. But in the meantime, that allowed me to have the $100. The house I took, my first house that I bought in Columbia Heights, I was cash flowing $50. Okay, $50. I'm not going to tell you the story behind that. I was having hell with my tenants. Okay, they weren't paying me. They're giving me grief. Okay, all for $50. Okay. So anybody that right by you say, "Why are you doing this?" And for $50, why? You're crazy. Just sell the thing and be done with it. Okay, no, but what's it called? I said my job allowed me the buffer to to sort of overcome the fact that the tenants weren't paying me for several months at a time and things like that. Okay, because I knew there's a bigger picture. Okay, so your cash needs have to be met, and so if you got a job, keep it. Okay, if you don't have a job, then obviously you want strategies that generate cash. Okay, as Greg was saying, you got wholesale strategies, you got rehab strategies, you got bird dog strategies. There are strategies that generate cash. Okay, and but you use those cash strategies to establish a foundation. Okay, because if you flipping a house, for example, and getting $20,000, $30,000, $45,000 paydays is very addictive. I mean, once you get down that track, it's very hard to get out of it, because you say, hey, $40,000, $300 a month. Let me think about it. So the quick cash is very, very addictive, and unless you have a perspective of a long-term wealth. So once your cash needs are taken care of, then you can start thinking about your cash flow needs. Okay, you're buying wholes. Okay, because so if I have to do it again, it'll be a mixture of the two. I will flip some houses, okay, to generate the cash, and then strategically buy the holds in order to generate cash flow. Okay, does that make sense? Yes. So if I have to do again, that's the strategy I would do. It'll be I call it the fast track, because it allows me to get to where I need to go to a lot faster than what I did before.
Question?
Yeah, I have a question about the tenants. What do you look for in a good tenant?
What do you look for in a good tenant?
Okay, I look for the world's greatest tenant. Okay, and because I'm the world's greatest landlord. Okay, and I'll tell you a story. Okay, I'm sorry about it. I have lots of stories. I've been doing it so long. Okay, I used to live in Columbia Heights, Northwest. Okay, and we left there because in the mid-90s, my next door neighbor was shot dead. And so my wife said, "Let's get the hell out of this place."
I don't think that's a good reason to leave.
No, I wanted to stay. I mean, but I kept the house. Okay, and
you let somebody else live there.
Better you than me. So what's it called? So I had this lady, this voucher holder, who came to apply to rent my house. Okay, and I'll never forget this. She came to the house, and she looked around the house and said, nice house, but I'm not going to rent it. I said, why? It doesn't have a jacuzzi, okay? It doesn't have granite countertops, it doesn't have, stainless steel. I mean, this is a voucher holder with a net worth of $0. Okay,
doesn't matter. They've got so they've got options.
Now, right. The point of the matter was I didn't understand it at the time what was going on. I understand it now what was going on. What was going on was that the market had turned. Okay, and there were investors out there who couldn't sell their homes. Okay, so because they couldn't sell their homes, they only had two choices: reduce the price or rent it. Okay, so now this voucher holder saying, well, hey, there's a guy down the street who couldn't sell his house, who's got jacuzzi and granite and so on, and he wants me because I'm a good tenant. So screw you, I'm going over there. You see what I'm saying? So the point is that when the market changes, all bets are off, and things, so it's very. And I learned a lot from that. What I learned was that if I'm going to survive, okay, in the buy and hold business, I've got to be able to compete with the guy who couldn't sell his house, because at some point the market's going to turn, okay? And I call it the fallacy of, well, I can always rent it to a Section 8 voucher holder. Okay, so I got a crappy house in a crappy area. Well, at least the voucher holder will take it. Okay, I mean that's the sort of a mindset. It's a warped mindset.
You can't have that mindset.
Because you can't have that mindset, because when the market turns,